guys, it's Kate, and welcome to another Autism Digest interview, where today we have someone who I'm really looking forward to talking to. He's an accomplished composer who has done works for such artists as Ray Charles, Alyssa and Cross, Trisha Yearwood, the Muppets, Charlie Daniels Band. I could list a plethora of artists that he's contributed to. He's won 2 Grammy Awards, one for a Mr. Rogers tribute album and another for the Sesame Street country album. He is Mr. Dennis Scott. Thanks for coming on, Dennis.
Hello. Glad to finally meet you, and glad to be on board with you and everybody out there in Zoom land.
I'm glad you're here too. I think a lot of people might remember you. It doesn't get bigger than winning 2 Grammy Awards, which I had the pleasure of seeing before we recorded. But for those that may not know you, do you mind telling a bit of your story in your own words?
Sure. My first Grammy was for a Sesame Street country album, and I was I was much younger then, and I'd always recorded my own songs that I'd written for myself. I did demo recordings of those, but I'd never produced a real professional album. And long story short, I introduced myself to the folks at Sesame Street, and they said, "Well, we like your stuff, but we don't know if we can use you. Why don't you come in and help us find some celebrity artists, singers, to be on this album with the Muppets from Sesame Street?" So I would put on a tie and go into the office. I wasn't paid anything. I just wanted to get my foot in the door. And eventually I made all these phone calls to every single country artist you can think of. And I was able to get people like Loretta Lynn, also known as the Queen of Country Music, a real legend. Glen Campbell, the great Glen Campbell, who had songs like "I'm a Rhinestone Cowboy," that one, and his girlfriend at the time, Tanya Tucker, who still records, and Crystal Gale, who was a great artist, and I got to be friends with her. Long story short, we did the album, and it won a Grammy Award, my first Grammy, and it was a very exciting experience to go to Los Angeles and walk the red carpet. So that's that. Do you want me to talk about the other one, or?
No, no. As they say, the rest is for written record. Look at your career now, and you have decades of music history on yourself in your living room. So that's a really good summary. The next question for you is, do you have any experiences interacting with the neurodivergent or autistic communities that you want to talk about?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked me that, and it's part of what really excited me about doing this interview, because I over the years I've been uh, approached by various autistic people who are at different levels, and the most interesting one I think is because there's a gentleman in in Australia that's pretty far away, and he found me because the one of the TV shows I worked on, it was a show called Naughty, and it was ran on PBS here in the United States, but it also ran in different countries. So he got to see it. He became a fan of the show, and he researched it, and he found out that I was both the producer and the composer of all the songs. And I might add, were 120 some odd songs for that series. So Joseph reached out to me, and first I was taken back because I, didn't know what to expect, and I was so surprised that somebody from so far away would be interested in something I had done. But he's a very smart guy, um, and we became friends. We just he asked if I could tell him some of the stories behind the songs and stories behind working on that show, and I enjoyed talking with him. And he actually he made a trip to the United States all by himself, um, and he came to Nashville, and he stayed at my house, and we are still very good friends, and he's done very well for himself. He started a record label, which consists of music from various children's TV shows, and he's doing pretty good. I'm very proud of him, and I like to think that in some ways my music, helped motivate him to get things started.
And that's the reason why I love doing what I do. You never know who's going to be impacted by the works of the people you talk to. So
Very
I'm
true.
definitely glad he's doing well for himself. My next question for you is music often thrives on unconventional thinking. In what ways do you see neurodivergent perspectives enriching the world of composition and sound design?
Okay. Well, uh, I I'm not sure I do understand the question because I'd never heard that word before, but it sounds very technical. Um, and I can say this: I'm kind of an old school guy. Um, and whenever possible, I try to work with live musicians, and I have a recording studio here. You and I kind of walk through it quickly, um, but it has drums in it, and it has amplifiers, and it has a recording uh, board for things like that. All sorts of microphones. And here in Nashville, which is also known as Music City, you've got the best musicians you can think of, and they actually make me look good because I can write the song and I can write out the music for it and I can hand it to them and they listen to it once and they do it and 9 times out of 10 they get it perfect on the first try. Um, so I, as much as I appreciate all the technology, and I do use some of the technology, but the the foundation for the songs and the productions that I do are really routed in the talents of these very gifted musicians who just have an innate ability to know what to play when. They know they know when to hit a chord and when not to hit a chord, and so it's really a joyful experience. In fact, that Sesame Street album I was talking about, that was the first time I got to work with Nashville musicians, and it, I brought somebody from Sesame Street with me, one of the music directors there, who was just completely floored when he saw how how amazing these musicians are. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
It answers the question extremely well. I lived in Tennessee myself for a couple of years, and I absolutely agree. They have some of the best musicians in the world who know what they're doing. That's
Mm-hmm.
actually how I got into music myself, living in Tennessee and being surrounded by that culture. So
Nice.
I definitely like that answer. My next question for you is where do you think the music industry is succeeding or failing when it comes to inclusion for neurodivergent artists?
Hmm. Uh, well, I don't. I think I can answer that in a general way. I think it's not so much uh, who you are or what your level of operations are. I think if you let's say you write a good song is a good song, no matter who has written it. Um, it's and the problems of getting songs heard are not uh, they don't discriminate between man, woman, autistic, or anything because we all have the same problems. If we want to get um, Willie Nelson to record a song, we have to get to him, and that's the hard part. I mean, writing the song is a labor of love for most of the people who do it. But if you want to get it heard uh, and have it recorded by somebody well known or somebody who's up and coming, that's the hard part. And it doesn't matter, who you are. We all have to face that. The good news is, um, yeah, I'd have to say it's good news that the nature of the recording business has changed. It's no longer the record labels are not the most important thing. Now you've got things like Spotify and different ways, different avenues to take your music. So if you're an independent artist or an independent writer, you can use some of those tools that are now available to us. And if your music resonates with people, then you'll start getting people who are following you and on YouTube or play or Spotify, and all of a sudden you've got a following, and in some ways that takes a little pressure off people who are composers. The other side of it is, I don't know how much you and your listeners want to know about this, but the other side of it, which is not as good, is that the payments and royalties for those things, like on Spotify, um, are a little disappointing. You have to get a lot of streams happening before you can actually make a living at it. Um, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
I definitely agree with you. Man, the big problem nowadays with any form of entertainment isn't necessarily the person itself, no matter their background. There's a lot of talented people that I've interacted with before. It's how the industry is ran. I think if we improve that, we'll never have half the problems we have in entertainment ever again. My next question for you is if you could implement one change in the music industries to support neurodivergent creators, what would it be and why?
Hmm, that's an interesting question. I would I don't know about the industry, because as we were just talking about, the industry has changed so much. Um, I think, and I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but I think that um, the record labels that used to call all the shots, yeah, I would say going back a number of years that it might be hard to get your foot in the door if you are a certain way. Uh, I think a lot of that has gone away because now the record labels, they're at the disadvantage. They have to make sure they find new talent and new good songs, and they're going to the same uh, avenues that anyone do, an autistic person or anything. Um, they will go in search on YouTube and on Spotify and different places to see, well, what's resonating with just regular folks. So I think it's more open aired now for everybody. I At least I like to think that, and I haven't seen any in my own personal dealings. I haven't seen anything that in any way was a detriment to people who, anyone who's not in the mainstream. Let's just say, um, to get their foot in the door.
I absolutely agree with that perspective. I think going back to say the 40s or so, when Elvis and Frank Sinatra were big deals, it wasn't as easy to get into music. You could argue it's not easy now too, because of how the algorithm works on some of these platforms like YouTube and TikTok. But I absolutely agree that it's becoming easier for anyone of any background, autistic or not, to make it in the world of music and entertainment. So I definitely like that answer. We just need to adjust a few kinks on the business side of things to make the industry more inclusive. My last question for you is what does the future hold for you? Do you have any new compositions that you want to talk about?
Oh, that's interesting. Um, well, I I do. I guess you would call it. I'm an independent contractor. People who hear about me will call me up and say, "Hey, we have this project. We want you to come up with, you know, sounds silly, but we need 12 songs about blue whales, and and we need them soon." So I get to work and do that. Right now, I work a lot with a company called Mother Goose Club, and they have a big presence online, and they record a lot of music. In fact, they stockpile songs. Uh, they have a team that writes for them the songs in house, but they come to me to take these demos that they've made and say, "Can you make this sound more professional? Can you make it sound more polished?" So that's the challenge for me, to take somebody's song. And the other thing, and you're I'm getting the impression that you're a songwriter, yes?
I'm a musician and
You're a
not
musician.
necessarily a songwriter
Okay, so
specifically.
but you work with people who write songs. So this it's challenging when you write a song. You know, it's like your baby. So you know what the baby looks like, and you know what the baby sounds like, and you still you want it to grow up to be you know professional and to sound good and look good and do good. But you know, babies are also very messy. So the my client Mother Goose will come and say, make my baby sound better. What they don't tell you is, but don't change my baby. I want it to still be recognized as mine. So the challenge for me is to how do I make this sound more interesting, more professional, without um, hurting the feelings of the person who wrote it. You know, because if I changed it too much, they'll say, "Well, that's not my song anymore." So it to me, it's a challenge. And as a writer, I respect that. Um, Although sometimes I like to think, well, I think this would work better here. Why don't you listen to what I'm telling you? And and most of the time they do say that and they respect my my credentials and things like of that nature. But I don't know if that answers the question. But I uh, I I'm happy to do projects that when somebody calls me on the phone, uh, I'm I'm happy to get that call and happy to do another project. More recently, somebody had an idea for a character which was called the world's first tooth fairy, and uh, and she's written books about this young lady who's a tooth fairy, and it's very cute, and I think it had possibilities. And I was really pleased with the song I wrote for them. They wanted a theme song. Um, Unfortunately, the project itself didn't get sold, so so I'm going to take that song. I'm going to try find new homes for it because I still believe in it. I love the melody and I love the work we did on it. So anyway, that's all part of the music business. I mean, I do recycle a lot of things that I have. If there's a song that I've written that I'm pleased with, but it never has gotten into a TV show or onto a record, I just keep it close by so that if an opportunity comes around, and in fact, this is interesting. Um, a fellow just called me. He's produced his own TV show. It's a children's TV show, and he's become very acquainted with the music that I write. And he said, "Please, would you help me write the theme song for this?" And just a couple of days, I finally sat down to look at it and look at his show and see, well, what does this show need, you know, for a theme song? And it struck me, I have a song that I still own all the rights to, and it's a very upbeat kind of song, and this was for an opening theme, and I just sent it to him. So I'm on needles and pins waiting for him to say, "That's it. That's what we need," and or to say, "We love it. We just want some changes," and I'll be happy to make those changes. So there you go.
Here we go, indeed. You definitely have a lot going on, and we'll be on the lookout for it. Anyways, that's good news for this interview, guys. Thank you so much to Dennis for coming on and sharing his perspectives. If you guys want to see more amazing interviews, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Autism Digest channel. Be sure to get your November issue that looks something like this by going to autismdigest.com. We recently expanded into Israel, so we're definitely proud of the growth we've achieved. And stay tuned for the audio file of this interview to be posted on our Spotify. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.